Welcome, everybody, to another brand new episode of It's My Wrestling Podcast. I'm, of course, as always, your host, Chris. And before we get started, please make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube or follow on audio platforms, depending on where you're getting this episode from. Today's guest is a lady I'm very, very excited to speak to. She is a black belt in Taekwondo, a former bodybuilder, a former FCW women's champion, has wrestled for OVW, is an ECW original. She's, of course, the one and only Riptide, Miss Angel Orsini. Thank you so much for joining me, Angel. How's it going?
How you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's great. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with wrestling lovers as a fellow wrestling lover.
No, thank you so much for giving me your time. How are things where you are over in the States? Is everything getting back to normal a bit more now?
No. Yeah,
no?
COVID is kind of disrupting things pretty frequently. And where I live, I'm in New Jersey, which is right by New York. It is 12 degrees, which is incredibly cold. So it's a little uncanny, this Arctic blast that we're having right now. But aside from that, I personally am doing awesome. Healthy, kicking ass, taking names, you know.
Yeah, awesome. That's good to hear. Yeah, things are getting back to normal a little bit more here in the UK. Like isolation periods have gone down, so it's still not normal. Nothing's ever going to be normal ever again, but it's getting a little bit better. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed this year is the year when we can get back to, a sort of normal way of life. Who knows? Something else is probably going to happen next anyway. But anyway, let's stop talking about COVID, because all we've done is talk about COVID for the last 2 years. So let's talk about let's talk wrestling. Let's have some fun talking wrestling. I often like to start my interviews by asking my guests about their origins, what got them into wrestling, their training, all those kind of things. And when I was doing little bits of research on your past and dates and times and years and things like that, I was thrilled to see that you had spent time being trained by the late, great Dusty Rhodes. So I would be remiss if I didn't start off there by asking about Dusty. What were your experiences of working with him like? What was he like as a person? Because we have this idea in our head of him being a larger-than-life character, always fun, always laughing and joking. Was he like that as a trainer and as someone to work for?
Yes, he was. He was a great person. He was, I would say, probably one of my most favorite people I've ever met in wrestling. He really was all of that and more. He was a great coach. And I met him, just to give everybody background, I met him when I was in ECW. So ECW was a big deal for me. My trainer, unfortunately, had passed away right before I got hired. So I was kind of alone in the world, like a babe lost in the woods, and Dusty, being the incredible human being that he was, absolutely recognized that about me and took the time to go out of his way to coach me and take me under his wing, which made me kind of feel more safe and allowed me to be more myself instead of always being kind of on the edge, right? As any kind of artist, a martial artist, as a bodybuilder, as a pro wrestler, you have to come to a certain level of comfortability with yourself and your abilities and your talent. And Dusty had this innate ability to make you feel very comfortable in your own skin. And he would encourage you and build up your confidence. Yeah. So I will always forever be indebted to him for that, because he did that for me. And whenever my schedule on the road would permit me to, I would go to the Kennesaw Dojo, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, I think was the name of his independent company. And I think that was also the name of the school. I'm not sure. Back then, that we're talking 2000. So I would always schedule time to go there and train. And he was always cracking jokes. Everybody was having fun. But when you were in the ring, absolutely different. It was like flipping a switch, very serious. Not that it was like flipping a switch that he would be a different person. It was just very focused, very important, because you need to know how to put your feet, how's the grip, under, over, what, and it's very technical. So, you know, when he was in that capacity, his technicality was incredible, and he really helped me polish, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Like, he would be, if I could speak to anybody on the show, past or present, Dusty would be right at the very top of my list. He just seemed like a really good guy. You've only ever heard nice things about him, like similar to what you've just said. I've never ever seen, even in this day and age where everybody's taking shots at each other and trying to tear each other down, I think you would have a real tough job trying to find anybody who didn't have something nice to say about Dusty.
I would say if anybody had anything not nice to say about Dusty, it would probably be more of a jealousy thing than it would have any credibility to it, because I spent all those hours in the dojo, because I'm one of those people. I'm like a gym little pest, you know, like I would live in the cobwebs, you know, at the gym, the dojo, or the wrestling school, where like I'm a homebody like that. I just spend hours and hours. When I go for the whole day. I bring a whole cooler full of stuff for me because I'm going to be there. I'm moving in, baby. So even if I'm physically not in the ring, I'm watching and listening to what everybody's saying and what's going on, and I want to be like a sponge and soak it all up. Yeah. And I never heard him ever be even curt or rash to anybody. Not an ill-spoken word ever. He would tell you the truth, and maybe you might not want to hear the truth. He wasn't going to delude you into not being aware of something that you needed to work on. So I could see, you know, there's always big egos and sometimes, and I could see maybe where some people might not appreciate that in certain, like, you know, if it's done in front of other people. But, you know, I think that's really just pride. And that's a matter of the person's character. And I would say that that's not a good character trait to have, because that hinders you from learning and growing. And as an artist, the truth is, if you really have a passion for wrestling or martial arts, you never stop learning. We are always learning from each other. And so to have an attitude like you don't want to hear it is kind of foolish, because you're creating your own, you know, blockage there. You're deciding, hey, I'm at this point in my growth and development, I'm going to stay here. Okay, it's your choice, but it's not what I would recommend. If you really want to, if you want to go to the next level, and you really honestly want to go to the next level, then you should be willing to listen to any kind of a critique, especially when it's delivered in a respectful manner. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. And especially when it's coming from somebody like Dusty, you know, there aren't many better people to learn from than Dusty. And it sounds like you say, he did it he didn't do it in a criticizing way. He didn't do it to tear anybody down or make anybody feel bad. It was like a constructive criticism sort of way. But some people just want to have it sugar coated, don't they? They don't want to hear. They just want to hear, yeah, you're doing great, you're brilliant. Yeah, nothing needs to change, nothing needs to improve. And I assume those are the wrestlers who don't make it as far, because they just think that they're ready already before they're ready.
Yeah, and it's so when you're pro wrestling, when you are a really exceptional pro wrestler, which everybody on TV is, because you have to be the cream of the crop to get there because it's so competitive. But one thing that it does when you watch them is it makes it look easy. And it's really, really not easy. It just actually is that they are that great at it. Yeah. You know? And it actually really does take an extraordinary effort to get to that level and then go beyond that and stay there. Because once you make it, now you have to constantly keep people engaged with what you're doing. And if you lose that level of hunger and passion to really be the 100% genuine wrestler at your level of greatness, maximum potential, then you need that. You need that hunger to keep striving. It's almost like you have to egg yourself on and kind of compete with everybody else that's on the show, right? Because you need everybody to pop when when you're doing your stuff. You need that audience reaction, right? And if you start to lose the fire, the passion, then it's really easy to get complacent and coast. And then, what's going to happen is you're going to get released because, you can't, they demand that from you. When you get there, you don't stop. You have to keep striving. You have to keep reaching for your next goal, for your next, you always have to stay hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. And just look at the last couple of years, look how many, if we're just talking about WWE, how many incredible talents have been released who you would think are at that level and are ready, but we've seen like Samoa Joe, Killer Cross, people like that all released. It's more than ever now is a time where you need to keep, like you say, keep working, keep hungry and keep trying to better yourself, even if you are at the top. Someone like Roman Reigns, who's obviously at the very, very top, has been for quite a long time, but his development that we've seen in the last couple of years goes to show that even once you're at that level, you do need to keep striving to, like I say, to find something new and to tap into something that you haven't tapped into before.
Exactly. What the terminology that we use in the locker room would be, you got to stay uncomfortable. Don't get comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you have to be willing to stretch yourself. Right? Because if you start to get comfortable, then that means that you're kind of getting a little predictable.
Yeah.
You found yourself a groove, and we all have this tendency to want to do this. Find a groove and kind of just, coast. But you can't do that when you're talking TV. You have to be pushing the envelope. You have to be stretching. And it's hard, because you're on the road, right? And that's really draining. Although when you're on TV, they have great catering. So we did not have that. My catering was some granola bars and maybe a banana or an apple. That was our catering in hardcore TV. But when you're WWE, AEW, you have catering, so you're not literally hungry. You should be
different kind of hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned before about ECW. Obviously, you're fondly remembered for your time in ECW. As I said at the start, Riptide. You feuded with another of my favorites, Jazz, a woman I was lucky enough to have on the podcast a couple of months ago, and she spoke about ECW a lot and the opportunities that she had there and wrestling men while she was there. Obviously, that's something that you did as well, mixing it up with some of the guys. I'm always keen to know, like, obviously at that time, WWE did not respect their women. They didn't use them well at all. How important was it for women like yourself and Jazz to basically showcase what women were capable of at that time, especially, like wrestling the men, to show that you were able to do what the men could do? Was that important to you ladies? Did you have that in the back of your mind at any point?
I think it wasn't so much. It was important as a female wrestler. Before I was hired at ECW, I wanted to be ECW for the reason of how they use the women wrestlers, right? They did make a differentiation between their valet manager girls and the girl wrestlers. And so for me, the storylines that were in ECW, I thought were the best on TV. And I really wanted to be there. And my dogs are bugging me right now. And so when we did get the opportunity to get out there and show our wrestling, it wasn't so much like we were like, okay, we're going to be women now that are going to, set the world on fire. in my heart, I wanted to just be equal with the guys because I thought they were the best wrestlers on TV. And I thought, I just want to honor this locker room and be at that standard and push the envelope in the hardcore extreme direction and be worthy of the opportunity that they have given me, because it was a worthwhile opportunity to get to be a girl that was on TV, not because of how she looked, but because of how she wrestled. And I was so honored to have that opportunity. And I just wanted to honor the opportunity by doing that work in the ring every chance I got.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you mentioned how they were the best wrestlers on TV, the best storylines, and that. I spoke to, when was it? About a week ago, I had Jasmine St. Clair on the show for an interview, and she said that her time in ECW, like, it was the best locker room that she was ever a part of. Would you agree with that? She said it was not what you would expect. Like, it wasn't always just hardcore guys drinking and fighting backstage. It was like a family. Is that something that you experienced as well?
Yes, it was a family. Absolutely. We still are a family. I mean, when I see my brothers at these signings or on a show, it's instantly we gravitate toward each other, and it's all like, hey, how's, this kid, that kid, the new wife, for some of the guys. So, yeah, I mean, that's where it's at. They were definitely family to me. I adore them and respect them still, every single one of them.
Yeah, it feels like even as a fan, like you watch certain promotions and you almost get a sense that wrestlers are trying to sort of like one up each other and get ahead of each other on the ladder. But with places like Ring of Honor, ECW, even Impact recently, it really feels like it's sort of like a family feel where you're all looking out for each other to try and push the company, push the promotion, and make it as good that it can, and make it as successful as it can. And that's how ECW always felt to me, like you were always very like-minded with each other.
Yes. Yeah. And also part of the reason why we were that way is because as soon as the ring was set up, we were in the ring wrestling and working out with each other. So, people would come and have their tryouts also, but we would get in there and work out first before we would let them come in. And that built that bond. So I think that one of the most important things in pro wrestling is trust, because we're sacrificing our bodies for each other. And so the way that you really have that really great bond of trust is to really work out with each other and train with each other and see how hard everybody's willing to go just in working out. Yeah. Not even anybody's there yet. And so when you see that, then you recognize these people are on my same level, on my same frequency, even though when they get in the ring on the show, they might be, stabbing somebody with a fork instead of doing a, tackle, drop down, hip toss, whatever. But they can do that stuff, right? It's just that on the show, we all have our kind of angle that we're doing, right? We have a certain style that we are on the show to have that placement on the card where it is, so that the fans don't see the same match every single match, right? It has to be a little different. So everybody has their own little style, their own little difference. But when we're working out, we earn the respect of each other because we actually can do everything that each other can do. And you find that out by working out together. And that's the only way to get that, really.
Yeah, like I say, that even as a fan, that sort of like this was a time before like the internet was really a big thing. Obviously, there was no social media, so you didn't see the wrestlers hanging out like before and after the show together. But even as a fan in that day, you could still sort of like feel that everybody got along really well, and that you were all sort of like good camaraderie, I guess would be the best word to describe it. While we're on the subject of ECW, something I have to ask anybody who's ever set foot in ECW, I have to ask about Paul Heyman, one of my, just for me, one of the most important figures in pro wrestling history, up there with Crockett up there with Vince McMahon, honestly, up there with Bischoff. I think what Heyman did for the business was so revolutionary. What were your dealings with Paul Heyman like? Like, was he particularly hands-on with the talent? Because obviously it's a very different business now, isn't it? There's so many agents, there's so many writers, so many different teams and producers and all that kind of stuff. But ECW sort of like felt like it was really Heyman's baby. So like, did he spend a lot of time with you guys?
I mean, yeah, it was split up, I would say, between Paul and Tommy. And because obviously you can't manage every single match, right? You want, and Tommy Dreamer really thought just like Paul Heyman, you know, in terms of the genius and in terms of, and I'm sure they had already figured out the storylines and what they wanted to do for many, many months into the future and how to build up for each pay-per-view. And some people were really more in charge of their own stuff. And it did depend on, you know, whether this was a house show or whether it was TV. So Paul was definitely very involved in TV. Because I was in a storyline of the tag team tournaments, because I was a part of the Simon Diamond, Johnny Swinger storyline. So I did work with Paul because we did have to have a production meeting because it was a lot, you know, of content, wrestling content, and a lot of people. We were a huge stable. So, you know, we all have to understand how we all fit together. And then, you know, Simon, Pat Kinney, you know, was basically in charge of us. And then, but they also trusted us to agent our matches. Like once we had a production meeting and we got what he wanted out of our match for TV, then it was up to us to get there. Right. Because everybody was so incredibly talented. You don't need to tell a Steve Corino, you know, how to get to where you want him to go. He's got Jack Victory, and you know they're going to be fine. they know what they got to do that. And so we weren't like I call that, we weren't babysat like that. We were trusted as the professionals that we are to get there, and so we did. You know, and I think when you give people that creative energy to like that room, that space to create, that you really get a better end product from it, because everybody cares so much more to like live up to that, you know, not just to keep it so that we continue to work in this environment, but to honor that opportunity that you gave us to do that. And so I say Paul was very involved, as was Tommy Dreamer. But, you know, everybody was so great that you didn't need an agent. If we were in a match, we were our agent and we worked it out with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything these days is so like overproduced and micromanaged and all that kind of stuff. Like you the day after Raw or SmackDown or whatever, you'll always see a news article will come up saying, oh, revealed which producers produced each match on Raw. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to know who's producing the matches, like, because that takes away from it a little bit. That, you know what I mean? Like back in the day of ECW and even the earlier days of WWF, it did feel like the guys were just going out there doing what they wanted to do. They knew how to get through a match. Obviously, they would have had a chat before and gone through some things, but the matches just felt very natural. And these days, it all feels very rigid, like they're just waiting to go to that next spot that they've been told to do.
Well, I will say that today it's a little bit different, okay, because so firstly, people come from all different schools and you may have a lot of natural talent and ability. You might know the foundation, but the truth is the psychology of when to do which moves, it does take a number of years to get there. Right. It's not something that, oh yeah, that makes sense. It kind of takes several years for things to make sense. Like I was just watching a match because somebody was like, oh, these girls had a really good match. Here, let me show it to you. And I was watching the match and I was like, this is not a really good match. They did some really great moves.
Yeah.
But it made not a lick of sense why they did this move at this time, and that it didn't make any sense. They were just doing moves to be like, oh, look, I can do this move. Oh, and then I can do this. And the truth is the crowd reacted exactly. They were like probably in the bathroom or going and getting their hot dog or their beer, because there was no crowd response. In the beginning, there was a crowd response and they were like, yay, we can't wait to watch these girls. And then after like the first thing, they were like, huh? Like the crowd was lost. You did not tell a story. You have to tell a story, and telling a story is an art. And that usually comes later, because when you're a new wrestler, you're so focused on these moves and the technical aspect of doing these moves, not killing yourself, not breaking your opponent. You know, you don't want to break them. You just want to pin them for 3 seconds or maybe get them in a submission hold. Okay. I don't want to break you. And, you know, then you can't work for a year because I did something to you. You know what I mean? That's not cool either. Yeah. So in the beginning, it's a lot of pressure and a lot of nerves. So you kind of need somebody to tell you and help you put together your match. Because you like, oh, I got all these moves. Which one do I do? You know what I mean? Like you really need somebody to kind of tell you, no, you know, you don't do the power bomb in the first 15 seconds of your match. It's not a good idea. It's a cool move, and I'm glad that you know how to do it. But why don't we put it a little bit, you know, more in, you know, late when we're ready to go to our limit. If we have a 10-minute limit, you know, I'm hired to entertain the crowd for 10 minutes. Then, you know, I need to be good enough at my art to tell the story, and then, but take 10 minutes to tell the story, not 10 seconds. Right.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Even as somebody that's obviously never set foot in the business, never set foot in the ring, I completely agree. For me, it's always been about the story. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about, I've never had the opportunity to speak to anybody who has had dealings or worked for this person, but I know that you spent a little bit of time working for Fabulous Moolah or in her promotion, Ladies International Wrestling Federation, I believe it's called. I've never been familiar with it. Didn't even know that it was a thing. But I've always wanted to ask somebody a question about Moolah. So I was thrilled to see that you had spent time there. Like, did you have many dealings with Moolah? She's obviously a super controversial figure for various reasons that I'm not going to get into now. But what was she like to be around, if you spent much time with her at all?
I did have several different interactions with her, and one of them was working for her on a show. I had already heard all of that stuff because the woman who trained me, my first trainer, was Liz Chase, and the woman who broke me in was Luna Vachon, and they were both trained by Moolah. I had already met Leilani Kai, so I already knew of their stories. You know, they all told me those stories. So, but the thing was, I wasn't trained by Moolah, so she didn't treat me the same way. And it was actually very positive interactions that I had with her. They were very respectful. However, because she wasn't my teacher, she did kind of cut my match short. And I was really mad, actually, because I didn't get to have my full story. Right. And so the crowd responded accordingly, that, you know, it didn't really get over. As an artist, I care about my match getting the response from the crowd, because the way that you build a career is people hear your name, and they have anticipation because of their experience watching you. So whenever they see you on a show, they want to come watch you because of those previous experiences. So it bothered me that I didn't get to give them what they expected of me. And when I went to the back, I expressed it, because I'm not shy. I'm a professional. I'm going to say you the truth. It wasn't a great match because we got cut short because you said we had to end the match then. And then she looked at me and she said, you're right. I'm sorry for that. And she said, I want you to be in the battle royal at the end. And I'm going to have you be one of the last people in the ring to make up for it for you, because that wasn't fair. And even Liz was back there and she was like,
yeah,
she couldn't believe it. And it was a great honor to be in that battle royale and get to be in the amazing women that had these long careers and get to interact with them in the ring. And they're all passed away now. They're all gone. So I'm forever grateful to her for that. And that meant the world to me. It still means a lot to me. And I mean, I had other interactions with her. And one instance, Mae Young and her were main event, and it was women's extreme wrestling or dangerous women of wrestling, something like this. We were in Philadelphia, and I had a hardcore match with Amy Lee, primetime Amy Lee. Mm-hmm. And we went all over the place, and we did our thing. And when we came back, Moolah came back at the end of the show because they were main event. And they came back, her daughter and her, and said, you guys had the best match of all matches before our match. And that just like me and Amy Lee hugged each other. We were like, oh my God, that's awesome. She just said a bunch of other things that were just really complimentary. And it was like, I teared up. It was beautiful. It's a big honor to have that kind of compliment from somebody who's seen all these women come and go in every single match. It was a big deal to me.
Yeah, like without Moolah, like I don't know loads and loads of the history. I know little bits, and I've heard all the stories, heard all the controversies, but I imagine without Moolah, women's wrestling would probably look very different to how it does now. I think that's safe to say. It's nice to hear some positive stories about her. Obviously, you read so much, you hear so much without ever experiencing it. It's nice to hear that she apologized, that she was nice to you, that she made up for it as well. That's really cool. That's a really cool little story. That is. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. I wanted to ask you, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to ask about the unfortunate car accident that you had, which obviously halted your progress in the business. I know that you've worked so hard to come back and actually be able to wrestle. You were wrestling not too long ago. I think last month you wrestled in December 2021. Yeah. I believe around the time of your injury, the accident, you had spoken to WWE, or you were in negotiations with WWE, something like that. So like, how hard was that to deal with? Because obviously the accident would have put that on hold. I assume you never heard from WWE again. Did you ever feel like just giving up? What was it that motivated you to keep working hard to come back to the business?
Well, so what happened was it was right after ECW ended and had their last show. And then I was in that car accident. I was paralyzed on half of my body. And yeah, so they were like, oh, you'll never wrestle again. But it's actually a really funny story. Not funny, but ironic. I was staring up at the ceiling and I was like mad at God. And I was kind of in the middle of a spiritual crisis, right? Because why would God, do this to me and all that? And I had a conversation with Kevin Nash about 6 years prior to this. And Kevin Nash, he was a basketball player and he had hurt his knee. And doctors had told him, oh, this is going to be hard to come back from. Like, you might not come back from this. And then he went through all this pain and this rehab. And then he went back and then it happened again. He hurt his knee again. And so he gave me this inspirational speech when I had met him. I had met him at this place and I had asked him for advice. And so he told me this story about how he rehabbed not once, but twice. And he was at this place where he was like, I've been through all of this. And he was in WCW, and he really wasn't happy because they were giving him like this wizard thing. And it was like, let's just be honest, it sucked, right? It was not cool. It was not his potential. He didn't say that. That was not his words, but I'm talking to you like, what was going on in my head when I was having the conversation with him. And he was at this point when he was giving me this advice where he was in negotiation to go to WWE. So he had hope of something better. And he was like, listen, so if anybody can tell you, the business is hard, it's me. And he was like, and all I got to tell you is you can't have any regrets. When life gives you lemons, you got to just say, you know what, I'm going to leave it all in the ring. He goes, back then I was saying, I'm going to leave it all in the court. This was my mentality. No regrets. When I'm done with a game, when I'm done with a match, no regrets. I gave my best. I gave 100%, all I could. And you don't give up. He goes, you never give up. You never walk away. And it was like so inspirational. He talked to me for like 20 minutes. I'll never forget it. And here I was looking up at the ceiling, crying, woe is me, boo-hoo, how am I ever going to get out of this? And boom, Kevin Nash's words came back to me at that moment. Don't you give up. Don't you have any regrets. They may tell you this. They may tell you it's over. They told me it was over, but it wasn't over. And look he had that great career. He got to go be Diesel and do all that great stuff. Then NWO, right? And so the second part of his career after all that suffering was better. And so that's what came back to me. And that gave me that hope to aspire that I don't receive what the doctors are saying. I don't care whatever it is, the pain that I may have to endure. Because when I'm done enduring that pain, I'm going to have that same thing. I'm going to have a better second half of my career than I did in the first half career. ECW be a blip on the screen of my career. And it kind of was in a way, because there were all these things that I had wanted to do that I did get to do, even though it was kind of more on an indie level.
Yeah.
W did have TV in Philadelphia. So I did get to do all those cool things, flaming tables and ladder matches and steel cage match. And I actually ended up with more championships after that point in my career than I had before. So
yeah, Kevin Nash, the life coach. I didn't expect that. Didn't expect Kevin Nash to turn out to be a life coach.
Yeah, it was true. And I had the support of like my best friend, Joy Nash, because I lost everything. When you're a wrestler and that's how you make your living, and then you get hurt and you can't wrestle, I lost my storage unit with all my like black belt certificates and my bodybuilding championship trophies, all of that gone. Because this happened, I was still trying to walk. I had no money. I lost all the money I had. That was it. Burned right through it. So she gave me her couch, and that's where I lived until, I can walk. And I did all my PT myself. I had no money for a doctor or anything. The only thing I got was a chiropractor that was paid through the car insurance. And they gave me these adjustments. And that's what it was. All my bones were like out of the socket, including like where my ribs went into my back. And that's why I couldn't, walk, was because the nerve damage, right? And that was, I'm telling you, so painful. Ooh. I mean, I would have these muscle spasms in my intercostal muscles, and tears would just run down my face. It was just excruciating.
Wow.
But I persevered. Made it, and I came back and I wrestled. I'm still wrestling now.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's pretty intense. We hear a lot about wrestlers having career-ending injuries, whatever, and they come back and they have surgery now. But that what happened to you seems pretty final, doesn't it? Like if somebody told me that had happened to somebody, I'd be like, oh, okay, they're never going to wrestle again. They're probably never going to walk again. That's one hell of a comeback story, to have nerve damage and all that kind of stuff, and all of your bones dislocated as well. And that's crazy. I've got to say, I'm a little bit inspired by that, to be honest. mad.
Well, what I learned, what I started studying, I've always been studying nutrition because I did as a bodybuilder, but I intensified my studying to learn about anti-inflammatory dieting.
Right.
And so that sound like turmeric. And I changed my diet over and started doing more of a pescatarian diet, got all the grains out. And because I was swollen and all my was very swollen. And so I changed my diet. I started learning yoga, and really trying to implement stretching and increasing my flexibility. And I can tell you that that is the foundation of why I'm still wrestling. And it's 25 years of a wrestling career. And I still do martial arts. And, you know, I still work out and lift and everything. And it's flexibility, I think, is key. And now I'm back. I'm totally gluten-free as well as mostly vegan. I do eat some seafood, but I keep it to a minimum.
I'm just tired thinking about it. It sounds like a lot of effort. I'm really impressed. Like, I'm sure you've heard that a million times, but I think it's incredible. That is one of the most, like I say, inspiring comeback stories that I've ever heard. You said in there that you've made lots of changes. I know that you've done degrees and things like that as well. And I mentioned Kevin Nash being a life coach. I know that you've become a professional life coach over the years as well. Degrees in health and fitness and things like that. So I wanted to ask about what you're up to at the moment with Elevated Living. I couldn't find too much information on it, but I knew that it was a project that you were working on with Joy. Is that right?
Yes, we're doing we're putting together webinars, and so it's a little bit different now in the COVID age with life coaching, right? But I think it has changed everybody's focus a little bit to maybe try and institute a healthier lifestyle. But change is really difficult, and it can be you know, it's mostly fear of the unknown. It's like, I don't know what to do, so that's why I'm not doing it. Yeah. And so we're putting together a virtual life coaching program where people can learn at their own pace, and it's going to be digitalized so that they can, as they go through the steps, it provides them coaching in many different ways because we're all different, right? So there's going to be messages, there's going to be video messages, and then there'll be like weekly live streaming events that they can attend. Plus, we're in the midst of creating a community. We're actually really going to be launching very soon with our first program. I would say, you know, I want to launch by March.
Right, okay.
So we're going to have stuff that people can do as like a self-study where it just guides them and they do it on their own. And then they have a community that they can go to for support, or they could do virtual coaching where it's more like attending, you know, streaming events that will encourage them and give them the information, additional information as they go through the steps. Because let's face it, sometimes we need like accountability. We need somebody to say, okay, come on, let's go. It's time. It's time. You know, we need that. We need the little nudging, a little poking. So that's what this is. And it's also, some people don't have a great budget to work with, right? So, you know, we want to make it so that it can fit the different levels. Will also be able to fit in different budgets, because we really don't want to leave anybody out. It's important to take care of yourself. It's your life, your body. You have to take care of yourself, and nobody's responsible for that but you. Sometimes it can be scary because you get like, oh, people tell you this is the secret, eat this, drink that. You know, it's really not one thing that's a secret. Okay. It's getting started. It's taking those steps. It's, you know, doing something different. And here's what you can do that's different. And we kind of like give everybody the information, but we do it we administer it in a way where when they're ready for the next step, they can have that next information.
Yeah. So you don't push them before they're ready. Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice to be looking after people. I think quite a lot of wrestlers actually, off the top of my head, try and get into things like this, don't they? Where they're just trying to give back. I think one of the biggest things is probably DDP yoga. And Mark Merrow, he's a guy who's gone on to do like life coaching and motivational speaking. Was this always something that you wanted to do once wrestling was done, or is it something that you've just fallen into? Is it a personal experience that's helped you to make this decision?
It's something I've always wanted to do. When I was younger, I went through a very traumatic event, and I had a lot of anxiety, and it was really very difficult for me to kind of find my way and cope with this and heal. So I always wanted to give back to people, because I think anxiety is a big deal. When you have anxiety in your life, it's hard to overcome. Like for some people, they're so overwhelmed with anxiety, they can't even leave their house, right? Yeah. And something like here we are in a pandemic where we have extraordinary anxiety levels, because even just there's everyday life has been disrupted on such, really, it's been infiltrated on every level. Your kid going to school, you going to work, you going to the grocery store, getting on the bus, all of this stuff. It can, so I always want to give back in that regards to help people learn how to manage anxiety, because I don't think our lives and our decisions that we make in our lives should be run by the fears that we face, because fearful thoughts are just thoughts, right? But you have a choice over which thoughts you focus on. And so I realized this at a very, very young age. It's really been like my calling my whole life. I tell you, like we would go to the grocery store and all of a sudden I'd be missing, and they'd be looking for me, and they would find me, talking to this adult, holding their hand, telling them that it was going to be okay. And, like that's always been me. That is my life calling. I have always just felt like people just need a little support, and I always knew one day when I was whatever, that I was going to end up doing I didn't know it was life coaching then, but yeah, I always wanted to aspire to have a business where my job every day could be helping people sort through these fleeting thoughts. So some people it's not anxiety, some people it's depression, and they have a hard time being positive, right? So this program, we teach about mindfulness. We give people actual techniques that they can use that will help them when they start to feel like they're overwhelmed. Yeah. There are things that you can do about this. And so I did get certified in neuroscience, and that helps be able to put together the program so that it's easy to understand and implement.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's lovely to see people trying to give something back and trying to help others. I know anxiety and depression all too well. Honestly, I get anxious before recording podcast episodes. So yeah, no, it's a lovely thing. And I know so many people suffer in silence as well. They don't like to talk about things. They don't even like to tell their loved ones. I don't like to tell, I think outside of my wife, I don't think anybody really knows how I think and feel all the time. And sometimes it's easier to confide in a stranger, isn't it? Somebody who you don't feel like they're going to judge you. Right.
There's no judgment. And everybody with whatever philosophical background they may have, this doesn't interfere with anybody's faith, whatever their religious background is, or, whether it's male or female, your sexual orientation, whatever, there is zero judgment in any of that. We want to help people live freely in accepting who they are and understanding themselves and being aware of that so that they can engage with others in a more authentic manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's lovely. Like I said, absolutely couldn't commend what you're doing anymore. It's a brilliant thing. I wanted to round off by going back to wrestling. And I know this is probably going to be a bit of a difficult thing, but I like to put my guest on the spot because I'm horrible like that. So you've done so many cool things. You've been a part of so many really cool promotions, done loads of great stuff. You've some things we didn't mention. You've toured Peru with Lita, trained Molly Holly, worked with Jazz, as I said earlier on, your time with ECW, worked with Mercedes Martinez, somebody who I am a huge fan of. And like I say, I know this might be hard to narrow down, but what's like the one moment, the one thing that you've accomplished that you're the most proud of, or the moment that you cherish the most looking back on? I know your career isn't over yet. You're still in and around the business, so this might be something that hasn't even happened yet. But so far, where you're at, what would you say is that one moment?
I would say right now the Circle of Champions documentary of women's professional wrestling, I'm one of the producers of, and I would say that is right now my one moment, that just telling the story of women's wrestling without it being all about Moolah, like she's the only, but really giving the truth of the historical context and some of these other women that people don't know as that aren't as famous, but their contribution was so significant and so important that telling their story is just means everything to me. And Medusa is a part of it. Jazz is a part of it. And so telling their story in the context of the whole history of women's professional wrestling and taking that and bringing it forward to where we are right now, I would say that is my moment. Because the truth is, there have been women going through glass ceilings to get to where we are right now. I mean, 20 years ago, me and Jazz, we wanted it to be 20 years ago the way it is right now. Right. And even like 10 years ago, I was saying, we could have everything the guys have. There's enough women then to have it, or even 15 years ago. Right. And those opportunities came and went. And instead we got bra and panty matches, pillow fight, puke, sorry. But, it could have been the way it is now. And so my whole goal with what we're doing is to ensure that the way that we have it now is the way that it's going to be. And when we go into the future, that it's the same and even more, that it stays this equality, this level of equality, equal opportunity. Yeah.
Awesome. You say that was Circle of Champions. Was that called, you said?
Yes, I believe there's a Facebook page about it, and there's a trailer on there that people can watch. There's a lot of famous people that we interviewed. I didn't personally interview them all. I've only been on this project, I would say, for like the last 2.5 years. I've been working on it. The director and executive producer, it's taken him 10 years, Christopher Arnino, to put this together. He's been doing all these interviews. Gary Wolf is also a producer on this. So, and Evan Ginsberg, the gentleman who was an associate producer on The Wrestler and also the documentary 350 Days, he's also a producer on this. So yeah, this, we're very hopeful that this is going to be a really interesting documentary. There hasn't been one on women's wrestling yet. No. So yeah.
Very cool. Are you when's that sort of like slated to be dropping? Is it soon? Is it this year?
I believe that it's slated for release for 2023 because we are still doing some stuff and going through into this summer with shooting some more interviews. So then
COVID probably didn't help either, did it?
No, we didn't get a lot done in 2020 at all. Yeah. So it kind of went into a standstill, unfortunately. Yeah, because people were getting sick, you know. So unfortunately, yeah, we were delayed. We originally wanted to release it this year, but there's a lot to be edited. So that's the only reason why, you know, it's going to take that long.
Awesome. I'll keep an eye out for that. I'll look it up on Facebook and I'll put any information that I can find in the description for this episode when it goes out as well. Brilliant. Angel, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for rearranging with me. We had a couple of issues before, so I really appreciate at short notice you rearranging this. I've really enjoyed your time. Before I let you go though, where can people find you on like social media, any shows or events, anything like that you've got coming up soon?
Yes, January 30th, Sunday at 3 p.m. for Spartan Championship Wrestling. I am challenging PJ Whip for her title. So it is a championship match. It will be at the VFW in Kenilworth, New Jersey. And then in March, I'm going to be a rematch for the Goddesses of War through Funhouse Championship Wrestling, and that I don't know where that's going to be, but if people go to my Facebook page, I always have that stuff posted on Facebook. I am the Angel Orsini. My website is angelorsini.net. My Twitter is the Angel Orsini, and the same with Instagram, and the same with TikTok. So please connect with me. I do interact with fans on a regular basis, and I enjoy our conversations, our messages, postings, and all of that. And yeah, I'm grateful, and I'm going to be wrestling even more coming up. And who knows, there's no limit to what's going on. This is only another beginning. 2022 has a lot of hope, and I am aspiring to do even more than just this documentary, but other films and projects that are still in development right now. But so definitely, I do recommend people stay tuned. It's coming.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. I really am. As a fan myself, it's great to see you in and around the business and doing other really cool things as well. Really awesome. Really happy that you joined me today. Like I said, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Guys, girls, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this. I hope you really enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Like I said at the start, please make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube. Please make sure you hit follow on Audio Links. Thank you for your support, and I'll look forward to catching you next time on It's My Wrestling Podcast.